Hello, I'm Brian, the Inclusive Finance Manager at Skylight Ventures. Welcome to our first quarterly Skylight Borrower Workshop. Today, we'll be giving you some programmatic updates from Skylight, having a short presentation on the importance of building a strong UK credit history and understanding your credit report and credit score. And at the end, if you could join us at menti.com, enter the code that you see on your screen and give us any feedback on the session and any questions that you may still have after the presentation. Our first update today actually comes from Turn, the sister organization that we work with at Skylight. Turn drop-in sessions are available for Skylight borrowers that need some extra advice or feedback on their businesses. Try a drop-in session with one of our Turn support leads, and you can find bookable sessions with these leads at the link that you see on your screen. Areas of focus in these sessions typically include issues around running a successful e-commerce business, unblocking problems or challenges in food businesses, improving your digital and technology strategy for your business, support outside of business issues with our community panel, and finally, general drop-in sessions for any other business questions that you might have that you want to ask. Our second update is about a new tool that we've developed over the last few months at Skylight, a financial business planning tool. And we've created a one-page, simple finance planning tool in template form that you can use to better plan your income and expenses to ensure that you're on a pathway to profitability in your business. It will help you track your personal income and expenses, plan your future business expenses and income, and better plan for your startup costs, all in order to help ensure that your business is on a path to profitability and what you may need to change if you're not seeing the profits that you expect. Once you look at this tool, if you want something that's a bit more in-depth, we have another tool that adds a few extra functions to it, such as product pricing help, more detailed sales forecasting and planning, better sort of tracking of your expenses in your business as well. So ask me if you think that tool would be helpful. Before we begin our main presentation, I want you to think about the statement, I feel I know why my UK credit history is important to understand. Write down a number between 1 and 5, 1 being whether you strongly disagree with this statement, 5, whether you strongly agree with this statement. At the end, please join us at menti.com. And when you're giving feedback and any questions you have, please also let us know between 1 and 5 what your sort of agreement was with this statement. And that will help us kind of understand the level of knowledge that people already have on the topic before going into the presentation. So today, we're going to talk about the importance of how you use credit in the UK and even how it can impact your access to some financial services. We're going to talk about what we mean by credit, why credit history is important, UK credit scores and credit reports, what can impact your credit score and credit report, and how can you find out what your credit history looks like and access your own credit report and credit score. If you get nothing else from this presentation, please visit some of the links that I've sent with the presentation. Most helpful to me in putting together today's presentation has been the education pages for credit scoring agencies that manage our UK credit data. That's Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian. Also, there's a couple charities which offer free advice around borrowing, debt, and credit questions. Please also visit the pages of Citizens Advice and Step Change to learn more about borrowing in the UK, and especially if you're having any challenges or problems with credit, debt, or borrowing in the UK. So what do we mean by credit? Many would automatically think, taking a loan, a credit card, maybe a mortgage to buy a house, or a loan to buy a car and making monthly payments on it. That's what we mean by credit. And you would be correct. But many may actually think, oh, I don't have any of these things, so I don't have any credits. But some forms of credit in the UK may not be what you normally think of. For example, did you know that the overdraft in your bank account actually shows up in your credit history? An overdraft is a small negative balance on your bank account that is allowed by your bank, and there's no interest on it, but it does show up in your credit history. Many of the services we rely on day to day also count as credit and show up in our credit history, such as utilities like our gas bill, electricity bill, or many service agreements like a monthly mobile phone bill, where we're paying monthly after we've used the service, rather than as a pay-as-you-go type agreement, which would not be credit. Buy now, pay later arrangements are being seen more and more on online shopping. So often, if you're buying something online, you may be offered the possibility to pay for the item in installments on a monthly basis by a company such as Klarna or other. More and more, this is being merged into our credit histories as well. So you should consider that an important part of your credit history going forward. So why is your credit history important? Essentially, a good credit history and a good history of using these services is needed if you want to be approved for more agreements in the future. And remember, in the future, if your business needs a service, the company may actually look at your personal credit history before approving your application for a credit card, a loan, a mobile account, or other kind of monthly services that you might need for your business, including utilities. Your history can impact not only the approval of whether your application goes forward or not, but also can impact the amount that you're approved for, the interest rate that you're given, and even charges that you might pay on the service, depending on how good or bad your credit history is. So the UK has a system of centralizing all of our information about how we use credit and debt. This information is then summarized into what we call a credit report. And that credit report is further summarized into a number that we'll call a credit score that gives a general indication on how weak or strong your use of credit has been in the past. The companies that are managing these reports and the credit scores are the same agencies I mentioned earlier, so TransUnion, Experian, and Equifax. Good to know is that they're typically only referring to information going back 6 years or less. Also good to know is that when you open a basic bank account, you don't need to worry that that is impacting your credit history with these agencies. So basic bank accounts, the bank will actually report to and check another system called Check Systems, which just shows what your experience has been kind of using bank accounts in the past. So it's a different system. I'm going to show just a short video brought to you by Barclays, which I thought presented a good short introduction on the importance of understanding your credit history and how to improve your credit history.
Barclays Money Management, how to create a credible credit score. Step 1, understand what affects your score. Your credit score is used by lenders to decide how likely you are to be able to repay any money they might lend you. It's worked out by checking your credit history, looking at things like how long you've had credit, the type of credit you have, how much you owe, whether or not you're paying bills on time, and how many times you've had a credit check. Step 2. Know what it can do for you. It's important because a good credit score can be very helpful in life. When applying for a mortgage, a car on finance, or even a monthly mobile contract, your credit score will be checked, and you could be refused credit if it's not high enough. And the better your score, the more likely you are to be offered better deals from lenders with lower interest rates. Step 3. Improve your credit and protect it. There are lots of simple actions that can help you get a better credit score. Make sure you're registered to vote. It's quick and easy. Get rid of any unused credit cards. Lenders can be concerned that you could choose to use all of your credit, then struggle to pay them back. Just close those gathering dust and try to stay comfortably within your credit limit, as maxing out your card can tell creditors you may not be able to afford repayments. A missed bill payment will show up on your credit file and affect your score. So it's a good idea to set up a standing order or direct debit to pay them automatically on time. Finally, although borrowing can seem like the easiest option, it's important to know that some types of credit can be expensive and impact your score. Check out other options, such as using savings or borrowing from a reputable provider like your bank. 3 things to focus on to make more of your money.
I hope that was helpful, and I will be sharing the link to that video along with this presentation. So, what do the main credit agencies know about your history and your personal profile? Biggest, of course, in your credit history is how you've managed borrowing and service contracts in the past. How you've made payments on time is the most important aspect here. So essentially, how you've used these services and how you've repaid them and made your payments on a monthly basis is the most important thing. Also included in their history are financial associations that with those that you share a bank account, credit card, or loan agreement with. Essentially, when you open a bank account with someone or get a credit card jointly with someone, their credit history now is linked to your credit history and can actually impact the quality of your credit history if they do not have a good experience with credit. The history of companies that have checked your credit history over the past 12 months is also shown in your credit report. This is important to companies that you apply to because they want to know if you're someone that's constantly looking for new credit and new kind of payments, because that could put you under a lot of financial stress, and they may not want to approve a new agreement for you. Public records, including any court judgments requiring you to make payments, bankruptcy, a court-ordered debt relief, payment plan, or any other payment arrangements, those are all going to show up in your credit history and look quite negatively in your credit report. Less known is that in your credit history, your address history is actually quite visible in your report. So essentially how long you've lived at your address and even how long you've been in the UK can impact your credit score. So as you stay in the UK longer, it's going to improve that part of your credit score. Now, I'm not from the UK. I moved here some years ago, and I have faced the challenge that, my address history was not very long, but as it gets longer, then that becomes less of an issue. So, how do you know what your credit history is? You need to check your credit report. And in the UK, by law, you are entitled to check your credit report with each of the 3 agencies that I mentioned earlier. And this is not allowed to have any negative impact on your credit report, the fact that when you check it. You have the right to request a copy of your credit report, and you also have a right to dispute any inaccuracies that you may see in your credit report. And those inaccuracies, if found to be true, found to be errors, need to be corrected within 28 days so that it doesn't further impact negatively your credit report and credit score. Your credit score now isn't as easy to get as your credit report. You normally have to sign up with an agency with a login account, answer some questions, and then they should be able to provide you your credit score. What is a credit score? So when you're considering a new credit, loan, or service contract, a provider is typically going to look at three things. They're going to look at information that you put into their own application form. They're going to have access to the credit history that shows in your credit report. And then they're going to get a number, usually between 300 and 1,000, that gives that relative indication on how weak or strong your credit history is. Now, this number is often quite important because a lot of companies don't want to spend a lot of time assessing your credit history. They just want to know quickly whether you're a good or a bad sort of bet in terms of someone that's going to pay in the future. What can impact your credit report and credit score? So paying loans, credit, or services that you owe on time is the most critical part of a strong credit report and score. And avoiding those court-ordered payment requirements, collections on past debt or services that are overdue, and any sort of debt relief orders is important to avoid to keep a strong credit report and credit score. Using less than the maximum available on credit cards, or if you're offered a loan, to not maybe take the maximum amount that they offer, but a bit less than your maximum, is going to improve your credit report and credit score. Companies want to see that you're not maxed out on the amount of credit that you could have, and that you're actually comfortably using less than the maximum. As I said, avoid applying for a lot of new credit and services, especially over the past 6 months, to avoid that having a negative impact on your credit report. Be sure you only share bank accounts, credit cards, and loans with people that you trust financially, because again, their financial history will then impact the quality of your credit report if they don't use credit very responsibly. Lastly, if you have nothing in your credit history or your credit report, that actually looks negatively to future companies that you might apply to for services or credit. So having just a couple entries, for example, having your name on a gas bill or a water bill and seeing monthly payments entered into your credit history is going to help improve your score, and much better than having nothing actually in your report. I do want to flag that as a new lender, Skylight is not yet reporting into these credit agencies at this point, but we may do so in the future. I now wanted to just take a few minutes to go over my own experience checking my credit report and credit score through the three agencies I mentioned earlier. So I did actually go and get my credit reports from these agencies just to make sure that I could confidently say to you that it's possible and is not that difficult. Now, of the three agencies, I'd say TransUnion is the one that I found the easiest, so you may want to start there. I also found their report to be the most detailed and had the most detailed information. They also didn't really care about having a minimum address history, which the other ones they asked for, and though it may have been possible to still get a report, it was a little bit more difficult than TransUnion. When I got my report, first of all, it came instantly in the web browser, which I thought was really nice and really easy. And in that report, I saw a lot of information about my use of credit and services in the UK. I saw my mobile phone bill with O2. I saw a credit card that I have, and I saw all the balances on a monthly basis that I have on that credit card. And each month in the past, whether I had made the payment on time or not, was pretty clearly shown in the report. I saw my Thames water bill in the report and whether I had made my payments on time. I saw my Lloyd's bank account overdraft history, so just the overdraft. It showed whether each month, whether the overdraft was in good standing or not good standing. I saw my loan history when I bought a laptop back in 2020, which I now paid for, but you could still see back then when I made payments and if they were on time or not. And I saw any company that had checked my credit report. I also saw when I checked my credit report, but it does say clearly that, that's just for my own information. That information wouldn't be shared with any outside companies because we're all allowed to check our own credit reports without any negative impacts. Equifax and Experian also provided me my credit reports. Like I said, they both were quite interested in asking for a 6-year address history. So at first it was a bit confusing and I thought, oh, maybe this is more difficult. But in the end, I found I could skip that part and just give my current address and still get a report. I would say Equifax was less detailed than TransUnion. So it mostly just showed green or red whether my payments were on time or not on time for each of the things listed in the credit history. Most of the things that I saw in TransUnion's report were also shown in Equifax and also in the Experian report. Equifax offered the opportunity for me to see my credit score, which TransUnion did not. But they asked me for my credit card number, so that felt a bit strange and I didn't feel comfortable doing it. So I didn't get my credit score from Equifax. Now moving to Experian, getting their report was probably the most complicated of the three because they actually had to mail me a passcode that I had to go back to their website and enter and then download my report. So it was a bit of an extra step, but I did get my credit report. And for the most part, it looked like the other ones. Now, interesting with Experian, I found it quite easy to actually get my credit score. So I signed up for their free account. I answered some security questions, and then they actually gave me that number, that credit score that gives that general indication on whether my credit history was strong or weak based on how I'd used credit and services in the past. So I recommend that you try that. And they even have a function where if you link it to your bank account, it can actually increase your credit score. So I thought that was interesting. And they said that linking it to my bank account, they couldn't make my score worse. It could only improve my score. And actually, I found it did improve my score by a few points. So that was quite interesting. So I recommend that you look into it if you want. Well, I want to thank you all for staying and joining us on this presentation and watching the recording afterwards. If you could please give us feedback on the session and ask any questions you might still have after the presentation at menti.com, enter in the code on your screen, and please tell us that number between 1 and 5 that you wrote down earlier on the level of understanding that you had on the topic before the presentation began. That will really help us understand sort of the level that people are at in understanding the topic today. Please tell us what you thought about the session and any questions that you might still have. And with that, I'm going to close the presentation. I want to thank you for joining. We are planning on having quarterly workshops like this. The next one will be scheduled for January 2024, and we will be reaching out with the time and detail for that session. Thank you again for joining, and see you next time.